Megalithic Star Maps with Martin Green, Part 4. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, and we are coming to you not live from the 10x10x10 Tangent Cube of Science, where we are nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. So this is take 2 of part 4. We have Martin Green on Zoom with us again. So we tried to record this before and it didn't work out, and that was before harvest. So there was a long break. And now we have Martin back with us. Welcome, Martin. Thank you.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, great to have you back on. And I'm stoked to see where you're taking your research here on the megalithic star maps. But also, before we get to that, I've got to make a special announcement. We do have the Watcher with us today.
Hey.
From deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. Watcher, buddy, how you doing, bro? Is he there?
Guys, doing well. Glad to
Uh-oh. Well, he's not in a bag of chips, but his transmission's not
be
working.
here. Super excited.
No, he gave
we can hear Brett, but
Yeah.
he gave the
too
tin
good.
can to Martin.
You guys hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
hear you, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Super excited to be here. Looking forward to the content, and just glad to be able to participate.
Yeah.
You can hear my space radio in the background.
Yeah, he is actually on call for space emergencies right now. So hopefully he'll be able to stick with us for the entire show, but we'll see. So yeah, Martin, if you need any weird fact lookup, you just call on the Watcher, bro. This is his job.
he's the man.
Yeah. All right. Or if you need any strange math, ask the Watcher. All right, so where are we going today, buddy?
Right, shall I start this show?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay, you can see that presumably.
Yorkshire Megalithic Complex, Part 4.
Yeah. So the picture here is Mont Saint Michel in northern France, and that might not seem to have an awful lot to do with Yorkshire, but we'll see as we go along that there might be some relation to it. So let's see how this goes. And as usual, I can't get the screen to move on. There we go. Cracked it. So today I want to do a quick overview of the story so far, because it's quite a while since we've done it, and there might even be new people look at this.
Yeah.
Then I went down a rabbit hole of St. Michael and the devil, and there were the reasons for doing that, obviously, because the devil's arrows is obviously related to the devil, but there are other tie-ins as well. So I then want to go on and ask the question of whether Britain was networked or maybe Northern Europe was mapped. After that, a quick look at astronomical alignments. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I've done a fair bit of work on that, and there's at least one of them that's interesting. And then the reason the next two are quite big is that I'm quite pleased with what is there, actually. So the thing about numbers, so I think there are specific numbers encoded into the design of this. So the golden ratio certainly is there. Pi could well be, Euler's number might be, and possibly the length of the great year. And the last main topic is the age of the build, which I've been teasing you with for every episode, I think.
Yeah.
But we get to it today.
All right.
So those two are pretty interesting, and it's probably worth watching all the way through, just to pick up on those. So the story so far. Now, if you remember, all this started when it was just after I'd joined the Discord, actually, and I was chatting to Shannon, so wish on girl in the Discord, just about stuff that's around Yorkshire, because she lives in Wakefield and I lived for 40 years in Yorkshire, and we spoke about Ilkley Moor, which is a well-known place for sort of megaliths and small stone circles and all sorts of things. And I could remember that there were some big stones near Borough Bridge, so we went and online we went and had a look at those, and that's the second biggest one of them. I couldn't find it with any adults next to it, actually, but you can tell it's pretty big.
Yeah.
So the Devil's Arrows, 3 large stones in a row, just outside Borough Bridge, which is a very nice market town in North Yorkshire. And they're just above the river. And we went on from there to talk about other places that were around Yorkshire. And I stumbled by accident across the henges at Thornborough. And I didn't know about these, and practically no one I have spoken to that lives in Yorkshire knows about these, which is absolutely amazing. So they've been called in various places Yorkshire Stonehenge. No stones there, but you know, the equivalent.
Do you think there might? Do you think there might have been stones there at one time?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know, but we go on, and one of the places I want to look at is Mayborahenge. In Mayborahenge, there were 8 stones, and you'll see that on an old map that I've found. And it makes you wonder whether within the henges there were stones, and certainly, obviously, at Stonehenge there is. Stonehenge is a henge, which is the circular earth embankment, and the stones are in the middle. And it's possible, I mean, I don't think enough research has been done on this for people to know.
Yeah.
The henges are big. I mean, the 860 feet in diameter, and the 2 southern henges, they take up an area, in each one of them takes up an area of about 13.5 acres, which I thought was quite interesting, because Randall was talking about some of the sites in America being 27 acres, so 13.5 is half that. So.
Yeah.
Don't know whether there's any significance in that whatsoever.
It's also interesting how that arrangement looks like some of the older crop circles.
Yes.
That's wild.
It does, yeah.
I think we may have commented on this earlier, but they're also arranged similarly to the 3 pyramids, right? They're not quite in a straight line.
Quite in a line, yeah.
There's 2 bigger ones and 1 smaller one.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's come on to that. Now, we also talked about the Rudstone monolith. This is the biggest standing stone in Britain. It's certainly not the biggest in Europe, though. I can't remember how high it is, but the tallest of the Devil's Arrows is about 25 feet, and it's bigger than that. Now, as you were saying, Kyle, the layout of the hinges here, even by the archaeologists who have studied it, think that it could well represent Orion's belt. Mm-hmm. Now, we finished this discussion, and so this was new to me, and I didn't know about this at all. And I went to bed, and I was sort of quite wound up about it all, you know. Can't get to sleep and thinking about it. And I get this, when I get into things, I get this, or what I call 3 o'clock voices. Now, I don't know whether it's my unconscious mind or it's something outside. But I got this nudging at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, well, if those henges represent 3 stars, maybe some of the other places around there represent other stars. So I almost got out of bed to think about it. But I'm pretty glad I didn't, actually, because it took me 3 or 4 months to sort of weep from the chaff on it. And I do like my bed. The first thing I had to do was find a star map, because at the time, I didn't have a clue about stars. Bright spots in the sky. But I didn't know what Orion's belt was, because I think everyone knows what Orion's belt was. But as soon as you find it, you see that you've got Orion's belt here, which is part of Orion. And then coming across, you've got Taurus with the eye of the bull here, which is Aldebaran, and the face there. And then on to the Pleiades. And it was the Pleiades that really caught my attention, because it's a group of stars, and we've got a group of stones at Burr Bridge. So I did enough work on that first day. I spent a whole day on it, I think, to convince myself it was right. But it took me like 3 months to get a method together of actually checking it reasonably exactly. And I can now take a star map and a genuine map. So this is Google Earth map, and overlay them, and you can see the result here. So these circles are the henges. So there's one here, 3 there, and there's 3 little rectangles down there, which are the devil's arrows. And the stars are marked by the stars. So you can see that is pretty accurate. Here you've got the rivers.
That's incredible.
I'll come back to the rivers. And there's a henge here as well, Nunwick henge. Now, I spent an absolute age trying to find a star that matched Nunwick henge, and there isn't one. But there is a reason why it is exactly at the point where it is, and we'll come to that later on. So just a bit of a blurb of the devil's arrows. So we've got the stars here, and we've got the stones there. So I've expanded the stars a bit, but that's otherwise that's still override. Yeah, the rectangles. So the distance between the southern stone, it says southern, the devil's arrows, southern stone, and the northern henge is 10.9 miles. So, and the accuracy on these stars is the more accurate, each one of those is more accurate than 100 feet. So, probably the average error is about 80 feet. And you can work out the odds that this is just chance, and it comes to an astronomical number.
Let's say that
no pun intended.
Yeah,
that's an astronomical number.
Let's say that 3,000 years ago, how much have these stars actually shifted in position to each other in 3,000 years?
Not much.
Not much.
In Stellarium, they allow for that. So as you go back, the stars sort of track backwards. Now, if you're looking at planets, you do get problems because,
of course, they're moving a lot more dynamically.
A lot more dynamic, yeah. But the stars are reasonably accurate, we think.
Okay.
I mean, some of the crazier ideas on the internet would have you believe that stars are flying around all over the place. But
well, I'm just thinking, they're within. Obviously, you'd have inaccuracies just from trying to lay out a star map on the ground in such a massive area like that. There would already be some inaccuracies, but then after 3,000 years, do those inaccuracies grow by tens of feet, maybe?
I've tried tracking it, and you've got to fix one of the sides. So I fixed the devil's arrows, and you can see particularly I think it's Anilam, the star on the southern henge does move a bit, but it's only like tens of feet, so
Okay.
it's not a lot.
Okay.
And it's quite difficult tracking it, actually, because despite having computers and maps and star maps, getting a consistent layout on getting the star map on the map in exactly the same place isn't that easy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
And even the calculations of the movements is like,
That's what I was going to
because
say.
it's our solar system is moving. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
that the orbit of the Earth has much effect, because it's just a recurring
Right.
wobble or
yeah,
whatever.
'cause you're going
But
round
our
and
sun's
round, but
moving;
it's
those
mainly
stars
the
are
movement
moving,
of the
and then
solar system.
and then they're all being affected by various gravities as well. So
The
they're not moving as,
the 3 trillion body problem. yeah.
right. Yeah, nobody's
Yes.
moving in a straight line. Yeah, and everything's being affected by everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, actually, because I did a post on the Discord about does anyone know why the solar system is so stable? Because if you think every second the Earth is moving and the forces on it change.
Yeah.
I mean, changing continually. So how does that system ever get into stability?
Yeah, it's like there's thresholds that are there for sure to like destabilize the solar system, but they're far out. They're far outside of the range of any variability in the last as long as we've known it.
Yeah, I mean, I
Till
actually
you get
went to
some
a
rogue
couple
body.
of astronomy sites and asked the questions as well. No one knew
Why it's They didn't know why it's stable.
why it's stable.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's where we finished up with the star map, and I'm pretty convinced that those henges and stones were placed to reflect the stars. One of the interesting things on there is that the angular distance between the Pleiades and Orion's belt is about 36 degrees, so it's about 10% of the full circumference of the stars that we see. So if these were laid out to size, the Earth's circumference is like 25,000 miles. So we'd be looking at these being covering an area of 2,500 miles. And if they did, you'd never realise they were there, obviously.
Yeah.
It's only because they're close together that you can see that. So they've actually scaled this down. And at the end, I've got a suggestion as to what the scaling might be.
Okay.
Okay. So, in episode 2, we went on to look at why we have this strange angle on this is the main line, and that main line is 141.2 degrees from north, I measure around here. And this is from Canabarn, which is Aldebaran. Sorry, we probably didn't mention that enough on the last one, but we have the henge at Canabarn represents Aldebaran. Aldebaran is the eye of the bull, and is the brightest star in Taurus. I think it's the 9th brightest star in the northern hemisphere. So this line down here is 151.2 degrees. So I spent quite a long time trying to figure out why it was laid out in this way. So the first one is, as I said, if you measure this angle here from north, it's 151.2 degrees. And if you track the rise of Aldebaran along the horizon, its southernmost rise is at 151.2 degrees, or 151 degrees. Actually, you can't get down to 0.2 of a degree. And that occurs in 9600 BC.
Wow.
Which, of course, is the date of the catastrophic end of the Ice Age. It's Plato's date for the end of Atlantis. And I think this next one is the most interesting one, actually, because the Dakota Sioux have this myth that Aldebaran fell to earth after killing a serpent, and that created the Mississippi River.
That's awesome.
We know that at this date, meltwater pulse
1B.
1B, it would be, yeah, happened, and that has been specifically measured. The measuring point for proving it was in the Gulf of Mexico. So it looks as though something happened around that time to do with that area of the sky that was fairly catastrophic.
Can you I would love to have the source for that Dakota Sioux myth if you have it. Just as an aside, that's really cool.
Yeah, let me make a note, because I'll send you it and you can put it in the notes.
What a great story.
Yeah.
Aldebaran fell to earth after killing a serpent and created the Mississippi River. And you can put, like, you try to imagine the anybody witnessing that river during the meltdown. Yeah. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic story.
It's fantastic.
And it fits really nicely with that date. Now, I continued looking, and the second one we came to was the Ripon Cathedral. I've got the sequence of these wrong, but second one is the Ripon Cathedral idea. So this line here, if we go to the centre point, this is the centre point. If you take a right angle to the centre point and go out in this direction, northeastwards, that line picks out exactly the summer solstice sunrise.
Is that really a right angle?
That's a right angle, yeah, because it's curved geometry.
Okay, you're right. It's curved.
Yeah. Oh, Google Earth tells me it's right.
Okay. I'm like, it doesn't look like a right angle, but maybe it is.
It's a wrong angle.
If I backtrack that, I come down to Ripon Cathedral, and the line actually, as I've got it there, comes along here. So passes about there. And at this end of the line, there's a standing stone on the moors. And at this end, there's a man-made hill, which is called Pudding Pie Hill. So Pudding Pie Hill, interestingly, if you measure the distance from here to Pudding Pie Hill, that distance is 1,000th of the Earth's diameter from the line. So from there to Pudding Pie Hill is 1,000th of the Earth's diameter. Now the third thought we went down was the legend of how the Devil's Arrows got built. And I just want to draw your attention here to How Hill. So the Devil's Arrows are here, How Hill is here. And in the legend, the devil attends a conference between the king, a group of druids, and a group of Christians who, the druids and Christians were arguing about who should have the state religion. And he was the devil came as a very old druid, and one of the Christians realised that the stone he was standing on was melting. So it's the devil. And he got mad and he threw these stones, and he threw them towards the town of Aldeburgh, but they fell a bit short. And that's what made the devil's arrow. But why Aldeburgh? Because if you look at the layout here, so we've got the devil's arrows down here. That's the main alignment, and the hill that he stood on was over here. The main town here is Boroughbridge, which is the local market town, and then a suburb of it is called Langthorpe, and Langthorpe is also quite big, but you've got Aldeburgh down here. It's a tiny place. Population is just over 1,000. So the next bit is partly based on what I might call remote viewing, so maybe questionable, and I'll tell you those bits. And some of it is based on genuine history, and I'll tell you those bits as we go through. So I find that if I'm sort of on the verge of sleep, just drifting off, and I can control what I'm thinking, I can sometimes get ideas along the lines that I want. So what I tried to do was say, tell me within this area what the main settlements were, and I got 3 back. So I got down here, and this was just north of the river, and it's exactly in the place where Langthorpe is. And I got some feedback on what it is, but quite clearly I got the feedback that a major road went up to the east of it. I also got something just to the east of Ripon Cathedral, and the feedback I had on that is it's a very small settlement, but it was like probably about 80 people, of which 20 of them were what you might call pre-scientist type things, and their families, a few slaves and things like that. And then up here there's a farming settlement, and I wasn't happy with that because I didn't get anything back about Aldeburgh, and I realised that I was asking about within the area of this, so I broadened it out. And I got some feedback that quite clearly said that Aldeburgh was a significant administrative centre, and that there was a small settlement where Boroughbridge is now, but it's very small, 2 or 3 small houses or huts next to the road. You also see that this road running down here splits here. So one of them goes east and one goes directly on south. Now, is there any evidence to support any of that? Is the real question. So the first question is, could Aldeburgh be ancient? And it turns out that in pre-Roman times, Aldeburgh was the capital of the Brigantes. Brigantes were the tribe in northern England who ruled almost all of northern England at that time. There's the story about during the Roman invasion, one of the people who were fighting the Romans, one of the British people, came from Wales, and he went to the Brigantes, who had a queen at the time, and asked for support and help, and she sold him out to the Romans. So he was taken off to Rome with all his family, and he made quite a famous speech that said, just because you wish to conquer the world, does it mean all the rest of us should be slaves? And this was in the can't remember who was the emperor now, but the emperor didn't actually pardon him, but he gave him a villa in Rome, in quite a posh area of Rome, and slaves and all sorts of things. And as far as we know, he lived out his life there. Most people who were taken by Rome in combat, particularly their leaders, were killed ceremonially. So he managed to get away with that. In Roman times, it was a major administrative centre. And if we look at the maps of the area, this is supposedly the road system before the Romans. So there's a major road coming down here, which is actually the track of what we used to call the Great North Road. It is now the A1 road. And it breaks off going eastwards here down to what is now York. It's Eberhacum, and then on down to Lincoln. And if you remember, we had a major road coming down and splitting off at Aldeburgh. So that reflects that. Now the Romans built roads coming out to the east and the west as well. So this is a pre-Roman map. Now, Aldeburgh, turns out, is, despite being small, there's a lot of archaeology being done there. This is the remains of the Roman wall around Aldeburgh, so it's pretty big. You know, that's a fairly hefty wall.
It sure is.
Take a fair bit of battering down if you want to take the town.
So was it a fort?
Yeah. Yeah, the Watcher says that Aldborough is etymologically means old fort.
No.
So Boro, it's old, and it's a barrow, a fort, you know.
That's almost in a Yorkshire accent. It'd sound that way as well. Now, you know, the Romans did a lot of fancy paving on their floors. Nothing that an archaeologist in Britain likes better than to find a Roman tile floor. And they found 3 of them in Aldeburgh.
Wow.
So this was a really important place, and that's probably why the story is that the devil threw the rocks at Aldeburgh and not at Boroughbridge.
Cool.
So he's a terrible shot.
Yeah, I was asking the Watcher to look up a link between Aldebaran and Aldborough because they sound similar, right?
Yeah.
They do, don't they?
But yeah, he says Aldebaran is of Arabic origin, meaning the follower.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's one of the 4 royal stars as well. So I can't remember the others, but they're set at 90 degrees to each other. So if you know where one of them is, you can probably pick out the others and find the cardinal points.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, should we take a break? Is that a good stopping point?
Yeah, this is a good stopping point.
All right, let's take a quick break. This is awesome.
Let's do it. Yeah,
Thanks,
great
Martin.
stuff.
Yeah.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. Opening up a fresh can of cider. We're here with Megalithic Martin, reviewing the previous 2 episodes. If you haven't watched those, you should go back. Wait, how many are we? 3 episodes.
Three.
Yeah, you should definitely go back and watch those, going into detail on all these things we're just reviewing right now. But let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Come to the wrong place.
Uh-oh.
It's
It's all right.
all right.
No problem.
Secrets revealed. There we go.
So we were talking about the legend. Now, the devil stood on How Hill, and I've had 3 looks at How Hill to see what I could find about it. And the first time, absolutely nothing. The second time, I did some digging around archaeological records and stuff, and on the sides of the hill, there's quite a lot of very old archaeology. Difficult to date, apparently, because it's basically rock stuff and things like that. So they've got some of it that is Neolithic, certainly. But this building, I had to dig around on the 3rd attempt. So it's a relatively new building. It was built, I think, about 250 years ago from memory. So that didn't interest me at all. But then I found it was built on the site of St. Michael's Chapel, or a chapel to St. Michael. Now, that interested me a bit more because that chapel goes back at least to the 11th century and maybe before that. And it turns out that the chapel was called St. Michael de Mont. So it's, I think it's St. Michael on the hill. But you'll see the relevance of that name in a minute or two. Now, the real question is why did they build a St. Michael's Chapel on this hill, which has got a relation to the devil? Because, of course, St. Michael is famous for killing the devil. So in Revelation, he's the one that does kill the devil. And I'm a bit confused as to the folk tales that he's killed the devil in the past, but there's certainly folk tales about that. And we will come across one of them later on. And there were 2 things that I thought about it. So, is it to provide a Christian story to overcome the legend of the devil? And here we have St. Michael actually killing the devil. So it's quite famous. This is an icon from somewhere in Syria, I think. And you can see his sword here, and the devil's under his feet. And if you think about it as well, this is very similar to the story of St. George killing a dragon.
Yeah.
We'll come across that as well. And the 2 stories seem to be intertwined in some of the legends, and it's difficult to separate them.
Can I just make a comment about this painting?
Yeah.
The sword looks more like, I mean, Randall's talked a lot about this, the whole, the broom star, and you'll have like a character holding like a broom type thing, and that's what it looks. It looks more like the.
That's exactly the second one. So, is the St. Michael thing related to Aldebaran, which is Aldebaran is St. Michael's star, so it's another link to it, and the Canaban henge and the devil's arrows, because here we've got St. Michael, and hidden in this there are 5 stars. Is that 5? That's 5. Now, I thought when I looked at those, I couldn't relate them specifically immediately to any constellation, but they look a similarish pattern to the Pleiades, not the same pattern, but a similarish one. So, is this a comet? And is St. Michael having a tussle with the dragon, as in St. George and the dragon?
Well, another thing I would say is that the position of the devil is somewhat like the Pleiades position. Like in the Mithraic tradition, Mithras always has like one knee cocked up, and he's sort of looking back like that.
Yeah, right.
Mithras, and so, but you can put the images of Mithras over the Pleiades, and it's like he's in that same position.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
So,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
so these things got
Stabbing the
me
bull.
pretty
Yeah.
interested. I hadn't interested. Sorry, was that Brett saying something?
No,
No,
Russ was saying,
I was saying
Mithras was stabbing the
Mithras
bull.
stabbing the
Yeah.
bull, but he's in this strange position where the bull is in front of him and he's looking back, right? And
Yeah.
it's similar to this devil position here.
Hmm. So this got me interested in St. Michael, and separately I'd been interested in devil sites anyway, because, I've got the devil's arrows and I knew that there were other devil sites around the country. And I'm quite well known now in the Discord for collecting devil sites. So if anyone finds a new devil site, they sort of message me and say, I found this, which is quite interesting.
Totally benign reasons for collecting devil sites, folks. Trust him.
So
Do it for science.
the building on How Hill has some sort of relation to St. Michael. Canaban Henge is Aldeburn, which has some sort of relationship to St. Michael. And the Devil's Arrows obviously have a relationship to the devil. So we're building up a little bit of a pattern here, I think. So that was the legend. A little bit of new stuff here, actually. So I was reading not long ago that our main cardinal point is north, but it's thought that the cardinal point for the ancients was east. Well, if you measure this line here, this line here, the main line here from due east, it comes out at 51.2 degrees, which is almost exactly the same angle as the Great Pyramid. And it ties in with a number of other similarities that we have between the sites we're looking at here and the Egyptian sites. So the henges represent Orion's belt. The three great pyramids represent Orion's belt. They were all covered in glowing white. So on the pyramids, it was limestone. It was bright white gypsum on the henges. They're all close to rivers, and the river that comes down here used to be called the Isis at one time.
Wow.
There are a couple of rivers in England that were called the Isis. There's one at Cambridge as well. Or it might be Oxford. So there are similarities between Egypt and here, and whether it's strong enough similarities to suggest a connection, I don't know. But this is yet another one of those similarities. Okay, so in episode 3, and we're beginning to get on to new stuff now, although you will have seen this before, we started to talk about the other devil sites. So these were all the devil sites that I'd found at the time, and you can see the devil's arrows here and Thornborough there. But there's loads of them all down here, and you'll see that most of them to the southwest of this line. And this is just another rabbit hole I went down. Actually, it's not got any relevance to the main arguments. But during the Viking Wars, Britain was split between the Danes, who were in the northeast, and what were the English and the Britons, who were in the west, were the Britons in Wales, and the English in the south and down here. So the Vikings didn't have a concept of the devil, So it's likely that any sites that were devil related during Viking times were renamed, apart from the ones that couldn't be renamed. So big well-known sites probably maintain their names, whereas the rest changed. I just thought that was an interesting rabbit hole to go down. I went for quite a long time with a sort of fallow period, and I couldn't figure out where to go with this after the initial bits that I'd done. And my 3 o'clock voices kept saying, go south, and I kept arguing with them. And this is why I think it might not be a subconscious mind thing, actually, because there's been 2 occasions when I've had arguments with them. And so I'm saying I have been south. I've been right to the southern border of Yorkshire. Well, no one wants to go outside Yorkshire, do they? I mean, So after a number of bollockings at 3 o'clock in the morning, warnings, go south, I eventually drew a line down from the Devil's Arrows right down to the south coast and traced it down. And lo and behold, I came across a site called the Devil's Quoit at Whitney. Now, I can remember that Kyle asked what quoit was, and it's a throwing stone. And these stones seem to get thrown around, so maybe that's why it's called a quoit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a stone in a game, right? Like you're throwing
That's
this.
right. Yeah. Normally with a hole in the middle of it, and you have to land it over a peg. And in fact, in a pub we used to go to, they used to have one. So there's a sort of coat hanger on the wall and a ring with hung on a piece of rope, and you had to swing it and land it on it.
Oh yeah.
It's impossible after a couple of pints. It wasn't easy if you were sober. Anyway, so I found this Devil's Quoit, which is at a place called Whitney in Oxfordshire, and it's 163 miles south of the Devil's Arrows. But to tell you, here we go. If you draw that line due south, the site at Whitney is 600 foot, to the west of that line. So that's an error of 0.07%. So, and the line then goes on into northern France and meets another Devil's site down there. So it's quite possible that all of these are related together, and I would argue quite strongly they are. Now, Devil's Quoit, if you Google it, you finish up with several Devil's Quoits. So there's one at a place called Newton Cromlech. Cromlech is a dolmen or a stone. Now, it's 157 miles due west of the Devil's Quoit in Whitney, and the variation on that is, I seem to remember, I can't remember the exact distance. It's about 1,500 feet off the line of due west. That's in Wales, and there are a group of Devil's Quoits in Wales. So this one is just near there, and it's one at Stackpole. And you'll see these on the map in a minute. Now, there's also one in Cornwall, and this, obviously, it was a dolmen. Just the top of it left now. So I was beginning to put together quite a list of these things. Now, I was also interested in St. Michael, if you remember. Now, I found churches to St. Michael at all of these places. There isn't one there because it's in the middle of the country, but which I thought that was interesting. So let's come to the Devil's Triangle. So beginning to build up to a possible network Britain. So this is the bit in Wales I was talking about. So this is Newton Cromlech, and this line doesn't look as though it's east-west, but it is. It's exactly east-west. So that line goes across to the Whitney site, and then we've got 3 in an exact line here, and 1 just off it, all of these Devil's Quoits. And one of the things I was reading said that in Pembroke, every stone is called a quoit. I thought it was interesting. So there's also an old hill fort here, which I did have a picture on one of the earlier discussions that we had, and it looks to me as though it could have been a henge at one time that had been turned into a hill fort, but they're all dead on a line, as you can see. I've got a note here. This line here on Samhain, which is the early November or late October Celtic festival, this marks out the sunrise on Samhain. This is a direct north-south down to to the Cornwall Devil's Quoit. This line here goes up to the Devil's Arrows, and that line from the Devil's Arrows is the winter solstice sunset. And if we have a bigger view of that,
Oh yeah, I do remember.
this is what we see. So that's our north-south line that picked up the Devil's Quoit in Whitney. This is the east-west line. This is the sunset line down to this one here. This is the red line here that goes down to the Devil's Quoit in Cornwall. And this pink line is the sunset on Samhain. So obviously they're quite interested in the day when the veil between the afterlife was thinner than ever, our Halloween. So all of those sort of look as though they might have something to do with sort of a networking effect. Now, you might have heard of the St Michael's ley line, which is this. It's very well known among ley line people. I got to thinking, I wonder if the devil had one, and it's just a different rabbit hole, and it's totally separate from the rest of it. But, and I think I found one. So this is the St Michael line in green. This is the Devil's line in red, and you can see all of these are Devil's sites, almost exactly on line. Now, at the bottom of the Devil's line, I've included this because it has relevance to what we were talking about with the fighting between the devil and St Michael. So St Michael's Day is the 8th of May, and the Helston Church is St Michael's. On the 8th of May each year, they have a festival in Helston, so it's related to St Michael, and they have a legend that says many years ago a fiery dragon appeared and dropped a large stone in an area known as the Angel Yard. So reference to angel and the devil and large stones.
Yeah.
And then further on, the devil was carrying the stone that sealed hell's mouth when he met St Michael and dropped the stone on Hellstone. Now, I never realised, I mean, I've been to Hellstone, I've been to Cornwall quite a few times. I never realised that Hellstone was Hellstone.
Wait, so Cornwall? Hellstone.
No.
So what's Angel Yard?
I don't know. I couldn't find where Angel Yard was.
Okay.
But there is a pub where there is a stone in the yard, which is purported to be this stone.
Ah.
So I'm not sure. I mean, I've never been to the pub, so I can't swear to it. So if we assume that this is some sort of recollection of an impact, and that impact came from somewhere around the Taurids, so from Taurus, so near the Pleiades. If we track back on the 8th of May, we find that at the moment the Taurids, the period when they're visible or impacting us, is around about October, early November. But that goes around the year as the great year goes round. So if we follow that round and look for the Taurids going backwards at a time that's around the 8th of May, we get to 9600 BC. So who knows? Maybe it's a memory of an impact at the end of the Ice Age. Okay, so let's look at the new stuff. So this first one is just a warning, I think, to take care about drawing lines. So I extended at the bequest of someone in the Discord, I extended the Devil's Line around the world. And I hit two significant sites, the Atacama Giant, which you'll have seen pictures of and heard of. The error on that is 14 miles, so insignificant error. And the giant Buddha at Lishan, and the error is a bit more, it's 76 miles. Sorry, and I thought it would give me a percentage, but it doesn't. So it must be about 5 times the one above, so about 0.25%. So either those were deliberate or it's totally accidental. So if we go back to How Hill, we did think that it might be a datum point for the build because the henges and the Devil's Arrows are visible from there, and somehow you've got to lay it out accurately if you're going to get the accuracy that we're seeing on some of these things. So we thought it might be the datum point for the survey. And we've talked about the chapel called St. Michael de Mont. And as I said before, that got me interested in the devil and St. Michael. So just to move on here, so in French legend, the battle between St. Michael and the devil started at a place called Mont Dol, and the devil was killed on Mont St. Michael. So we're getting a similarity in names there. So St. Michael de Mont and Mont St. Michael. Quick look at Dol. Dol's quite a nice place in Brittany, and it's one of the few places with a hill in Brittany. It also has a huge menhir, and a place called the Devil's Seat. And it's also got a cathedral. Now, the legend here is that a guy called Saint Samson, who in the Arthurian legends was one of the people in those legends, and he is a historical figure as well. He went from southern Britain, probably in Wales, down to Brittany, and did a lot of work locally there, but he helped build this cathedral. When the devil saw the building of the cathedral, he was sat on this seat, and he threw a stone which knocked off the top. And this is the stone he
I
threw.
remember this.
So that's the second biggest stone in Britain. It's 9 meters high, which is a bit bigger than the stones in Yorkshire. It's not a lot bigger, but it's a bit bigger. It's obviously a bigger diameter there.
But are they so like on this stone, for example, do they have any idea of any kind of dates for it? Is there anything besides that myth or that story that talks about who put it up or
No.
no?
I mean,
Okay, it's just
obviously
it's basically completely unknown. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, loads of these we can only guess at, really.
Right. Okay.
I mean, who knows who really built the stones at Karnak, for instance?
Right.
And there's loads of them, and they don't seem to have an awful lot of logic to them. Everyone that's looked at those rows of stones can't make much sense of them.
Right.
One must assume that there was some sense. So anyway, so there was this battle, and the devil was killed at a place called Mont St. Michael. This is Mont St. Michael here. Now, Mont St. Michael, there are several tales about it. It's certainly they've found Neolithic evidence around it. The current building was started about 700 AD. There's a tale that there was a giant there called Gargantua, and he kicked stones from his boots, and one of the stones formed this. I'll take that with a pinch of salt. Now, another tale of it is that you can see at the moment it's totally surrounded by sea at high tide. But another tale is that it was on the coast at one time, and there was an earthquake and a tsunami that separated it from the land and put it in the sea. And final interesting tale that I found was that the king's daughter called Helena. Where does the name Helen come from? Was abducted by a giant, and I did have the name of the giant, but I've lost it. But Arthur Kay and Bedivere from the Arthurian legends went to rescue her, and in the end, it was Arthur that killed the giant.
So this thing it's in a bay.
Yes.
Okay, that's amazing.
So there's a big tongue of land that stretches out to the east of it, and it's sort of it's sheltered from there. I mean, it must be a great place actually, because sheltered from the worst of the eastern weather.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yep. So, but there's a very similar site in Cornwall called St. Michael's Mount. You see the similarity?
Oh yeah.
And there's more similarities than that. So I've only been there once actually, and I never quite got to it because we went when Deirdre was pregnant, and she slipped and fell on this causeway and twisted her ankles. We had to turn back and never got there. But on this site, there's evidence of habitation going back to between 4,000 and 2,500 BC. The buildings that are there were first started in the 8th century.
Yeah, it's practically brand new.
Yeah, almost. And there's a legend of a giant.
Ah, of course.
So this giant was called Cormoran. He was as tall as a cliff and as strong as 20 horses. Sorry, not houses.
Horses.
Horses. And he was a real pain to the people around there. Kept going raiding and stealing their lambs and their sheep and their horses and their cattle. And this young lad called Jack decided to do something about it. So one night he went and dug a pit in front of the path down to the sea and put spikes in the bottom of it. And as the dawn came, he stood on the other side and threw stones and insults at Cormoran, who got into an anger and ran after him and fell down in the pit and was killed. So Jack the Giant Killer. Now, the interesting thing about that is that during excavations in the early 1800s, they found a skeleton that was 8 foot tall.
Ah.
So maybe there's some truth in it. Now, do you remember I told you that St. George and St. Michael and dragons and the devil seem to be mixed up?
Yes.
Well, I first came across Dragon Hill talking about St. Michael, but the legends are stronger about St. George killing the dragon. And that happened at a place called Dragon Hill in Uffington, according to legend. Dragon Hill looks like this, so you can see that the top has been taken off. And you see that white bit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The legend is that the dragon's blood was spilt there and nothing will ever grow on that point.
Huh.
Now, Uffington is quite interesting because it's the home of the Uffington White Horse, which you may have seen pictures of. So this is Dragon Hill, this is the White Horse, and this is the White Horse. So they're very close together and probably go back to the same time, but no one knows.
It's the survey point for making the white horse.
Yes, good thing.
Yeah.
So is that maintained, or does just nothing grow on that white horse?
No, I think it's maintained. I think all these white horses are maintained.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's just gravel in there? What is the stuff that they...
It'll be chalk, I think. Yeah.
Chalk? Okay.
That's cool.
It's beautiful.
I mean, these are chalk hills, so...
Okay.
Probably ain't that difficult.
Right.
Right.
Should we take a break?
From here? Yeah.
Break time. Yep.
Alrighty.
Oh, white horse.
I think I know what Karnak is, dude. It's Hinge Mart.
Come get your hinge stones.
That's where you go to shop your hinge stones.
But why is it called Karnak, and why does Egypt have a Karnak?
I know, that is interesting.
It is strange, yeah.
All right, we'll be right back.
Yeah. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Second half of the show. Continuing with Martin, megalithic star maps. Doing a lot of discussion on St. Michael, the devil, and various sites. I love these two giant stories in these sort of mounds in the bays. That's amazing. And sometimes, it seems like I know this might be a bit of an aside, but it's like these stories could be, there was a group of people there that were really annoying, and they would live in this, and they would come out and raid and take sheep and everything, and then, and then they go kill them. But then he says, well, they found an 8-foot skeleton, so.
Well, according to the early legends, Britain is the land of the giants.
Yeah.
And in fact, this morning I found a map of where giant skeletons have been found in Britain. I posted it on the Discord if you want to have a look. But there's loads of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Hugh Newman has done a bunch of of work on that too.
I think it was probably from Hugh's book that that I got the map from, but well, I didn't get it from there. I got it from the internet. But,
Yeah. I don't know.
This is the land of the giants, buddy.
Come on.
Don't be trying to take our titles.
So, are we going?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
All right. Right, so we'd started with the chapel on top of How Hill being called St. Michael de Mont. And then we've found a St. Michael's Mount and a Mont St. Michael. And we've also bumped into a Dragon Hill.
Can I ask a quick question about the horse and these geoglyphs? Do they have any idea who made those or how old they are?
This horse is some of the horses in England, hill figures, are relatively new, but this is thought to be a very old. So they don't really know how old, but it's certainly pre-Christian.
Okay.
But whether it goes back 5,000 years, we don't know.
Right. Or 9,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can put all these sites together? So see if I can get my thing to work. Now, if I draw a line from Mont St. Michael to How Hill, it looks like that. And you can see Dragon Hill here. Now, that line is less than half a degree off due north, and that gives us an error of 2.7 miles because the line length is 378 miles. So, reasonably accurate, I think. Dragon Hill is less than a mile off the line. Now, if I also draw a line from Mont St. Michael to St. Michael's Mount, it looks like that. Nothing very significant about that. But then if I take a right angle at this point here, to How Hill, I get that. So if I take a right angle, it goes to How Hill. And the angle is very slightly off again. So it's a perfect right angle would be 28.33 degrees. And you can see it's 28.78 degrees. So there's an error of about 2.2%. But it's a diagonal line, which must be an awful lot more difficult to survey than a north-south line. Now, if the line actually went to the northern hinge, it will be slightly more accurate and the diagonal error would be reduced to 3.2 miles. So these sites do seem related, not just in name, but in layout. And the real question you've got to ask is, how did they ever do that? If that was done deliberately, how was it done? As far as we know, they didn't have maps. It's only like 250 years ago when they had decent surveying. I'll come to that later about what the possibilities are.
Have you checked the upper triangle from, say, How Hill, St. Michael's Mount, and then a right angle from, so make a right triangle out of How Hill
coming out this way.
So like you would go east-west from the line of How Hill to Mont St. Michael so that it intersected St. Michael's Mount. Do you get what I'm saying? Come down.
So come out this way.
Come down from How Hill. Go and then stop there, go straight across 90 degrees to St. Michael's Mount.
No, I've not checked that, but there is something later that is relatively interesting.
Yeah, because what I'm looking at there is something. It almost looks like a 1-2 right triangle. So you'd have a 1, and then 2 going up, and
Yeah.
so that triangle,
check.
like a 1-2, huh?
I'll check that tomorrow.
Yeah, 1-2 right triangle is how you get the golden ratio, right? So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it's a square root of.
Yeah, 3, 4, 5 triangle.
It's the square root of 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you can do it with a compass and a straight edge, and you can derive the golden ratio out of it using a compass,
Right.
a 1/2 right triangle.
Right, I didn't know that, and I'll look it up and I'll have a play with that tomorrow. I've tried laying out lines coming down here and up here, and they don't go anywhere. So that was, if it went to the northern henge, it hardly makes any difference. So I just want to talk more about henges, and that'll lead us on to the concept that there is a bigger network going on than what we've seen. So if you remember I think it was the first episode, I talked about a possible culture along the western seaboard of Europe. And these are all the standing stone locations, and you can see that bulk of them, there's lots and lots in northern France, and quite a lot around here and up
Standing stones or hinges?
here. Standing stones, these are.
Okay.
But if we look at henges, we get a different picture.
Oh yeah.
So Britain is the land of the henges.
Mm.
And I decided to look at others in the north because they'd be the easiest. I can associate them more easily with what I've got. So the triangles are ones we've already seen in the work that I've done, and these squares with green rings in them are ones that I didn't already know about or hadn't mapped before. So the first one I looked at, the biggest outstanding one actually, is called Maybra, and it's in a little cluster. So there's Maybra, there's King Arthur's Round Table, and there's the Little Round Table here. Now, quite interestingly, there is a stately home over here, and if this line were to represent Orion's belt, the other star would be directly in the middle of the stately home. So one wonders whether they've knocked a henge down to build that.
Yeah, they built it on top of it. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, probably would have been a good foundation already, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So Maybra henge is I've got a note somewhere about it. It's 550 foot in diameter. So the henges at Thornborough are 860 feet in diameter, as I said before. So it's a bit smaller, but nonetheless reasonably impressive. So you remember I was saying earlier on about stones within? So this was an early survey of it, and you can see that there's a big stone in the middle which was still standing at that point, but there were other stones down around here. And it just gives me, I've tried to track it back to the Pleiades, and it's not exact, but I want to have a fiddle about with it. I only found this yesterday, actually. So I want to have a fiddle about with it and see if I twist the thing around, I can get it to match. But you can see that the concept of these things being near rivers, you can see that they're near rivers, but that might be pure coincidence because lots of rivers. Now, you might remember this because, once again, these are all the sites that we know about, and these are the new ones. We discussed a line going from the Devil's Arrows to Castle Dykes and up to Castle Rig. and another line going from Arborough through these two hinges here at Yarnborough and Castle Dykes, and then a whole string of stone circles all the way up to Orkney. And that's a pretty long line and fairly accurate. So this line here, the error at Castle Dykes, is 1,400 feet, which turns out to be 0.35% of the line. I want to press clear on it, which won't work. Now, if I draw a line from Maybury through Castle Dykes, it takes me directly to a henge that I've known about before, and is one of the recognised triangles that I've got, called Newton Kime. Now that line is over 75 miles long, and the error at Castle Dykes, if you want to call it an error, is that.
Wow.
Not only that, I can extend that line to another couple of hinges. So if I fix the ends accurately to West Ashby, the biggest error I get is at West Butterwick. But if you think that the errors probably should be shared over them all, it's not going to be a big error. So that line is 145 miles long. Even at West Butterwick, it's only 2.3 miles, which is 1.5%. Newton Kime is 0.5%. Castle Dykes is 0.17%. So that's pretty accurate. Now, if we put those two together, ooh, Castle Dykes Junction. Imagine this is a railway system. A train just chugging up from Yarnborough Henge. Now, the next one we want to look at is some sort of thing around Yarnborough Henge, and you can see I thought it was important because I've got it in twice. But if I then go from Maybury through Yarnborough Henge, I finish up at Cadby Henge, which is once again one of the ones we knew about, but it goes directly through there. And the error there is 0.36 miles, so it's about 100 miles long, so it's 0.36%. So have we got a network Britain? So these are the lines that we'd had previously. So this was from the Devil's Arrows through to Rudstone. This was up to Catterick. This was the Devil's Arrows through Henshire down to there. That's our long line up to Orkney. And if we remember this, so this was our north-south line down to Whitney. This was our east-west line. That's our north-south line from Pembroke. These are major lunar standstills from both Thornborough and the Devil's Arrows down to the Devil's Point in Cornwall. So do we have a network Britain? Now, I just want to add to that. So we remember this, we talked about this a few minutes ago. Now, I found this on the internet, and I don't think the person who posted it had quite an idea of quite what it meant. So if you draw, so that's our baseline, but if you draw them both to Stonehenge, this is what you get. So Stonehenge to St Michael's Mount is 176.43 miles. Stonehenge to Mount St Michael is 176.3 miles. So the error there is 0.074%. Now, how did all this occur? Is it just random? Because the only other two things that you can think possibly could be is that it was all, somehow they managed to map out Northern Europe and could survey accurately enough, and I do believe they could survey accurately enough actually, because what we see in Yorkshire would imply that.
This one again,
Uh,
this one on the right here with the measurements to Stonehenge. I'd like to see that triangle divided in half and made to be two right triangles from Mont Saint Michael
To the middle of the line between.
to the middle of the line between, and see if they're 1x2 right triangles.
so this way.
No, other way.
From Mont
halfway,
Saint Michael,
halfway
going
between
northwest.
Stonehenge and Mont Saint Michael, and go up
Yeah.
to no halfway halfway between Stonehenge and Mont Saint Michael on the line.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
No, I'm sorry. Wait, Saint Michael's Mount. My bad.
Right. Yeah.
So the middle of that line.
Yeah,
Down
up
to
to
there, down
yeah.
to there. Yeah.
Yeah, are they two 1x2 triangles? They look like it to me, but obviously,
They do, don't they?
So how would
they
so yeah,
do.
I've been thinking about like how you would check this. You know, you would have to number one that you're pointing out major and minor lunar standstills, possible risings of stars in the deep past. So you would have to know first. You would have to know like all of the possible things that they could try to be making alignments to, and then you would have to take all of the known sites and see how many of them don't have any possible alignments to anything, and then take that and say, okay, now here are the ones that do have alignments to themselves, to astronomical events, and here are the ones that don't. And then you could, you know, even then, it would just be a guess because we don't know what they're trying to point at a lot of times.
That's right.
So it's like, all you can do is look at it and say, well, it seems like at least some of them are built in relation to each other. And then I don't know, maybe somebody who's better at statistical analysis can tell us or whatever, but it's like it seems like you're basically making a personal choice.
yeah.
You know, because how would you test it? You know, so you find all these alignments and you're like, you know what, it really looks like this was coordinated across not just in Britain, but also, you know, in Europe.
I mean, I don't think you can ever prove it. I think the statistics show that there is a star map in Yorkshire, but proving this sort of stuff is so difficult.
Yeah. I'm asking if you can disprove it, right? That's the question is, can we come up with enough evidence where we can say, okay, you can find a bunch of alignments, but there's thousands of sites and you only find alignments in, say, less than 100 of them. So it seems like chance, right?
Yes, yeah.
But that may not be the case. There may be thousands of sites and there may be hundreds and hundreds of alignments. And then you would have a harder time saying it's chance, but you still haven't proven that they are alignments, right? So I don't know. It is an interesting question because you showed us that map of all the standing stones and I'm like, damn, there's a lot. And so you could, there's a lot of standing stones and, you know, and even just hinges. But still, I do think that many of these alignments are very interesting. And obviously when you're going through this, you're going to find some things that aren't meant to be alignments if they were.
Yes, yeah.
Right. But
do you remember when you had Mario Builderep on?
Yes. Yeah.
I took a few of his sites and I checked them against solstice and equinox and lunar standstills and stuff like that. And the most interesting one I found was one in South America that was near a volcano caldera. And on the solstice, the sun set right into the caldera.
That's cool.
Wow.
I just thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was just checking, wasn't he just checking cardinal? Right? Most of his stuff was about, is it aligned to north?
Yeah, he thought everything was aligned to north.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Right, let's move on.
But hold on. But what do you think? You were asking the question, is Britain networked? You know, you've looked at this more than us. So what do you think? Is this a network of sites? And the fact that you don't have alignments for all the other ones just means we don't have the information to try to line them up? Are any of them built randomly?
I think that this in particular is a genuine alignments. And if we just go back, I think this is this big triangle here.
Okay.
I think this line across here certainly is. I think this is interesting, and I've not done enough work on it. And I think, as Kyle says, there's probably a lot more analysis that you could do on it. I think some of them were, yes.
Yeah.
But proving it or disproving it is very difficult.
And what would have been the purpose? Is it sort of like an aesthetic? Is it an attempt to do some sort of as above, so below magic?
What's the purpose of building a henge or building Stonehenge?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know, do we? I mean,
Right.
I've toyed with the idea that maybe they're a way of getting earth energies,
Yeah.
get something vibrating. But how do you prove it?
Right. You can't prove it. Have you done your sort of, like your alpha sleep checking, like asking those kind of questions, like what was this for?
Yes, yeah, but I just get a blank.
You get a blank. Yeah, okay, it's redacted. You're not worthy to know yet.
You don't have the access to
you
that
don't have
section of the
access.
library.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, it's like Marty was saying on one of his recent ones, you only get the messages when they want to give you it, more or less.
Yeah, that's
You don't-
right.
It's very difficult for you to initiate
Matthew?
Marty.
Marty. Yeah, in one of his UFO, one of the recent ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was talking about that, and I thought, yeah, that figures.
Right. Yeah, you don't have the access credentials yet for that data.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
So who knows? I might get promoted.
Right, yeah. If you get promoted, let us know.
Just last though, I was watching one of the last Ramble ones, and he was talking about the mounds in America. Well, we know Britain is the land of the henges after we've looked at that. If you remember from the episode 1, the megalithic people who built the henges vanished from history at around 2400. We had one or two ideas what might have happened to them, but their DNA almost totally goes. It's the replacement population had about 8% of their DNA in it. Randall implied that a lot of the mounds were built around 2000 BC or after. Could it be that some of those vanished people went across the Atlantic?
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, the similarities are significant, I think.
Yes, they are. I
Yep.
agree.
If you think that they probably have another 300 or 400 years to develop their ideas by the time they started building some of the American ones.
Yeah. It's one thing. It's one thing to say that a pyramid is the easiest tall structure to build. It's another thing to say that a hinge is like the most logical thing you would do with dirt. No, it's not.
It's not.
It's
So, I mean, it's a similar discussion about Dolmen as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I wanted to ask. I didn't.
Korea and Japan and
Yes,
near
they're
the
in
Black
Japan.
Sea and in Cornwall.
Yeah, the dolmens are strange. I was going to ask you about that one. You said all that's left is the top. Are they sure about that? It's not just buried?
It could be buried, couldn't it? I mean, no one's interested in these.
Yeah, they don't
things,
dig them up, right?
There's any research in on them. It's
because
so
the drawing showed enormous,
that's right. Yeah,
and they're not there. So did
Yeah.
somebody steal them? Really, or is it
you would
buried?
have trouble stealing them, wouldn't you? How do
Yeah,
you
I
know
think
that-
it would be a different. Yeah, you don't show up in the middle of the night and just take one. It's. I mean, I guess they could have been broken up and used as, stones for building material.
You got to
in the
give
area.
ancient thieves some pretty serious credit, though. I mean, they literally stole a pyramid in Egypt. There's a pyramid that's almost completely gone.
It's gone. Yeah, that's right.
That would be a brick one though?
No, it was
Abu Rawash was
Abu Rawash megalithic stones.
Megalithic stones,
and they're just gone.
Yeah.
Right.
There's fragments lying around, but most of it is completely gone. Yeah.
Just shows if you're determined enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably took hundreds of years, though.
Yeah. Okay, so do you remember I spoke about churches near devil sites having preferred names?
Yes.
I've just got one slide on this because it's a sort of rabbit hole, but I did go down it. So I did find a list of churches. It's quite difficult to get a full list of churches. There are about 45,000 churches in Britain. I got a list of about 10,000, which I assumed was a representative list. So working on what I had, I got a probability of 99.3% of the churches near the devil sites being named differently to the mainstream churches. Now, that's, to people that know statistics, that's nearly 3 standard deviations. So we can say with a fair degree of confidence that people wanted to somehow overcome the devil connotations with names that they were happy with. So it'd be St. Michael, St. Mary, and what's the other one? It was All Angels and All Saints. Obviously, St. Michael goes with All Angels and All Saints. So I spent about 3 days on that because the data was rubbish.
There you go.
Okay.
He went through a list of 10,000 church names for 3 days. And
Had to associate them with places near Devil's
yeah,
Name.
and he comes up with one slide. He's like, "Yep, they named them different, folks."
I can go through the logic if you want, but
No, that's excellent. Thank you for doing the legwork on that. I'll just
incredible.
believe you. Yeah.
right, astronomical alignments. So we're looking at where 2 monuments or geographical features line up to an astronomical event, and that event is normally time related. So the most often it's to a rise or a set of an object, and that is most often to the sun or the moon. So there's often a marker on the horizon to mark where the object sets. So I'm looking from, say, the Devil's Arrows, and I can see a stone on the hill opposite, and I can see the moon is either aligned with it or it isn't. So I know when it is that it's a major lunar standstill, for instance. So the ones that are commonly thought to be used are obviously equinoxes and solstices. Equinox is always east or west. The solstice changes with latitude. You also get cross-quarter days, which are halfway between, and they're very close to the main Celtic festivals in Block Beltane. Can't pronounce the next one, Samhain. Those are the dates of them.
Lugnasa. Right? No, it's something, probably something totally different.
It's as good a guess as any. So the moon, you have major lunar standstills and minor lunar standstills. Effectively, it's the furthest out the moon goes along the horizon. Or you can have them to specific stars, but they're going to be almost impossible to find, because how do you know what star they want to point at? So you've got to know something about their culture or about what the site means to associate it with a star. So we can say that this would be a good way of measuring time. And it's commonly thought that these things were set up to actually measure time. So we can get 8 dates in a year from the sun, and they will be obviously pretty accurate to the seasons. The moon, depending whereabouts you are in the cycle, will give you 24, 25 or 26 a year. And it could be possible that if you can measure a specific point by a star, that you can remember events over long periods of time. For instance, you can say that the end of the Ice Age was when Aldebaran was at its southernmost rise.
Yeah.
That's cool. So
Now,
that's
when
related to the fact that the star doesn't or barely changes its relative position, but so that it's moving along the horizon on a single day in the year is due to precession, right? Like that's
Yeah, for the entire year, a star will appear to rise in exactly the same place. I mean, it takes about 100 years to move a degree along the horizon. So
well, that's if you're only looking on the same day every year.
Yeah.
no, every day of the year it will be the same, but it'll rise at a different time.
Okay.
Now, I didn't believe that when I first saw it, but if you run through it on Stellarium, you'll see it's
So
right.
it just rises at a different time. It doesn't move along the horizon.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It moves around.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because our tilt would be the same no matter, we're just in a different position around the sun.
Yeah.
So that does make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's
So it doesn't matter. Okay, that's cool. So it doesn't matter what time of year you're aligning something with a star, because it's going to stay the same. But until the precessional wobble changes, that's when the star's position changes.
Yeah.
Cool.
As I say, generally it moves. It's about 100 years for a degree of rise.
Or 72 if you're going with the idealized great year.
All right.
If it's a star that's somewhere near the center, so somewhere near the pole,
The ecliptic.
it's taking 72 years to do a degree. It's actually, I think it's 71.66. But you get down to the horizon, you have standstills at each side, so it goes faster in the middle than it does at the ends. I've got something I can show you on that later on.
Okay.
All right. Well, should we take a break?
Sure.
One more break.
Last break.
Yeah.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. The final segment of the final hour. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Wrapping it up. Martin, you got 30 minutes.
All right.
Tell us how it all works.
How to get the star angle.
Oh yeah, yes. Well, you can never be too sure, can you?
Can't be too sure.
Well, one thing you need to bear in mind here is that we define the rise point of an object differently from the ancients. So our technology is good enough so that we can say specifically the point when the object crosses the horizon. They would generally define it when they could clearly see it, which is normally about a degree above the horizon. I won't go into the stellarium bit because I think we're a bit short of time and we might want to do that later. But we can go into stellarium and find out where the solstices are and the lunar standstills are at any point on the globe. And we can read off the angles of those. But we do need to allow A for this rise difference, so it'll be a degree further up than stellarium says, and also any hills that surround the site. So the angle that any monuments are aligned to on the horizon are always going to be maybe a degree or two south of what is shown in stellarium.
Yes.
And that is, so you've got to remember that when an object rises in the east, it moves in a southerly direction. So,
Yes.
and it reaches its culmination due south, and then starts to set again effectively. Right, so if we go back to Yorkshire,
I want to point out real quick, I think there is a way to add to put a custom background
Horizon
installer.
line.
Yeah, horizon line installer. I think
Yes,
you have to have
there
a
is,
special
yeah.
you have to have a special photograph, but you can insert it.
Yeah.
And then you can look directly from the spot you want to see where was it actually rising over those mountains or that hill or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. I've never done that. I always fiddle about with measuring angles and working out lengths and triangles and stuff like that. So maths is quite the math is quite simple. You can work out roughly, within half a degree where you are. So as far as I can see, neither the Devil's Arrows nor Rudstone have any local astronomical alignments, which quite surprised me, actually. So if we go to Thornborough, these are the henges and these are the main axes. So those lines actually go through the entrances. So this one comes out the southern entrance here and into the northern entrance here. And this one goes out the northern entrance and straight through the northern henge. So if you stood in that centre, you'll be able to see into the centre of that henge, and I say into the centre there because there isn't a southern entrance on this henge, and straight through this henge. So as I say, there's no southern entrance on the southern henge. So I take that to mean that that is not an alignment to anything significant, and I can't find anything that it is significantly aligned to as far as the sun or the moon's concerned. It's about 6 degrees out from a lunar standstill. But if we look at the northern one, this line here is 321.8 degrees from north. The land on this side rises slightly, and the major lunar standstill set is at 321.8 degrees. So that looks as though that was meant to point to the lunar standstill. And this slide shows how it would look. So I'm stood in the centre of the central henge here. This is the embankment of the henge I'm in. And then these two are the embankments of the northern hinge. So this is the nearest embankment, and this is the furthest embankment. And the moon would drop down that line, and as it sets, it would appear there.
That's awesome. Wow. Is it possible that the southern hinge, or I think it's the southern hinge, the furthest one that doesn't have an entrance on the south side, is it possible that like they had some standing stones there or something that collapsed and it just buried that entrance? Have you looked, in other words, have you looked at a possible alignment as though it had an entrance?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's about 6 degrees. The nearest it gets to is the major lunar standstill rise, but it's about 6 degrees out from there.
Okay.
So I'm pretty certain that was never meant to be.
Okay.
Now, when I've been to the to Thornborough, the embankments don't seem to have a consistent height. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but you can imagine that they might have dips in to allow for an alignment to something. So I've been round all of the major alignments that you can have. So just going around the loop here, we've got the northern major lunar standstill, the summer solstice, the minor lunar standstill, the equinox, the minor one here again, the winter solstice, and the major southern rise, and they're repeated with the sets on the other side. All the ones in blue, I found something that could be an alignment, and I don't intend to go through them all, but I will show you the first one just so you get the idea of them.
You know, it'd be really, really amazing is somebody wrote an app to where you could get on maps, and wherever you placed the cursor, these would appear in their proper angles. That would be freaking awesome.
Yes, if you
would that make it so much easier?
That would make it so much easier.
Okay, nerds, get to work out there.
Yeah, a plugin for Google Maps.
Yeah.
Google Earth, actually. But what surprised me is I couldn't find any equinox markers. Now, I did think for a while that the Devil's Arrows mark the equinoxes, because obviously the Rudstone is due east of the Devil's Arrows. But I couldn't find a really convincing one for the set. So let's just have a look at one of them and you'll get the idea. So if I look at Stellarium, so I'm looking at the major lunar standstill rise. The angle is 36.73 degrees, which is this line here. Now, the moon is just going to be breaking the horizon at that point, so they wouldn't have considered it to be risen. And it doesn't get to be risen until point B here. So at that point, it's 1 degree above the horizon, and you'll notice that there is something here. So this is a plugin from megalithic.co.uk of all the sites that they have, and all these squares represent one of their sites, and that's a church that you can see there. It's a sort of cross. So that's where they would first see the moon. Now, there's an All Saints church there. Remember the link to the church names? Now, that church is relatively new. It's built in 1821, but it's on the site of a much, much more ancient church, and there's still 2 of the old stones there. And that's one of them. You can see that it's very eroded. I mean, that's a cross on it, and you can hardly make it out. So after point B, the moon passes behind this hill here. So the moon is moving up. The vertical height is exaggerated here, but it does pass behind that hill. And it doesn't become visible again until point C. So at point C, there, the moon becomes visible, and there's an ancient settlement there called Scarthwood Moor. So megalithic.co.uk has it down as a large settlement, potentially in continuous use from the Neolithic period to the Iron Age. But nearby, there are 7 stones that are called the Seven Sisters. So we're back to the Pleiades.
Yep.
So the tallest of those stones is 5 feet. It described it's deeply weather-worn on the top. Do you remember the stones are weather-worn on the top?
Yes.
Or maybe carved on the top. And the other 3 stones are about 3 foot high. The moon continues then to move up to point D, and point D is in the trough there. And that is probably the actual marker that they would use for the standstill, because the moon actually clearly stands out. As I said, the vertical height is exaggerated here, but you can see effectively what it would look like.
Yeah.
Now, around that point, we get lots and lots of these.
Yep.
So if they're measuring the moon over an 18-year cycle, an 18.6-year cycle, they're going to want a lot of measurements that they can, recordings. So you want one for each cycle of the moon, which is a 20-day cycle. And I can imagine them having all these lined up on tables and moving stones along when the moon reaches the point where it starts moving back again. And so the recording time.
That's really cool,
Wow.
dude. That's amazing.
Calendar? I don't think you'll find any archaeologists back in that.
That is really cool.
That is.
Yeah. So, of all of these, that is the most interesting one I've found, and I could do a whole show on just going around these, but I don't intend to.
Can I just say, I love the way you build presentations with all the links in them that take you to things that you can choose not to do and keep moving in a different. That's so cool. Really well done, man.
It's years and years of giving presentations to senior management.
It's very cool.
You don't like that? I better go down this path. Right, I want to talk about numbers. I think that this is one of the most exciting bits. So I'm concentrating here, obviously, on the golden ratio, which is 1.618, and all of these are based on the golden ratio. But let's just revise what we've found so far before we go into that. So the distance from the North Pole to the Devil's Arrows is 1/10 of the Earth's circumference. Pudding Pie Hill is 1/1000th of the Earth's diameter from the axis line of the monuments. Central Henge to the northern one is 2,480 feet. The circumference of the Earth is 883 miles. Devil's Arrows is exactly 54 degrees north, which is 60% of the way from the equator to the pole, or 15% of 360. The size of the Earth is encoded into the design of the the monument, I believe.
Wow.
Right, let's go on to the golden ratio. So, who discovered the golden ratio? Obviously the Greeks, wasn't it? So, golden ratio, that's the symbol for it, and it's called phi.
Symbol kind of looks like a hinge with a sight line going through it.
I wonder if that's a coincidence. Right, so if you get a line, you can split it into two at any point along the line. So the line length is C, the long length is A, and the short length is B. There is one point along the line where the ratio between A and B is the same as the ratio between A and C. Now you'd think that that'd be 2/3 of the way along, but it's not actually. So this is more or less what I said. Now, people who have artistic temperaments, are more artistic than me, say it's the most pleasing way to split the line, and they've done tests with people on that, and it appears to be right. So that's the mathematical way of saying it. So A divided by B is the same as C divided by A. Now that comes out to 1.618. Oh, 1.618, which we had at the beginning. Now you can reverse that and you can say B divided by A is the same as A divided by C. Now that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting.
Get the difference between those. So this is purported to appear in lots of places in nature. So in the human body. When you look at a girl and think she looks beautiful, apparently it's because her proportions are in proportion to the golden ratio. And I'm sure when a girl looks at a boy and thinks it is same thing, you know. But not being in that position, I won't know. So it's been known about for a long time, and it does appear throughout the body. And there is a mathematical formulation for it, but I won't bore you with that. So some interesting features about the number. I'll rattle through these fairly quickly, but you can see that this is probably one of the simplest number series you can see. So it starts out no, and you add 1 to it, and that gives you a 1. If you take that number down to there, and that number down to there, it gives you a 2. So you take that number down to there, and that number down to there, gives you a 3, 5, 8, and so on and so forth. Well, what's that got to do with the golden ratio? Well, if I divide one of these numbers by the other, I get this. See where it's going? Yeah.
Mm.
So I'm finishing up with 1.618.
It's getting more and more accurately.
It's approaching the,
It's getting more accurate.
Wow.
Yeah. And the more terms you add on to it, the more accurate
it gets.
This is called the Fibonacci series. And Fibonacci series is is behind all those curves that you see. Just some fun numerology here. So if I divide 1 by 1.618, I get 0.618. If I square it, I get 2.618. Let's take a rectangle that's 1.1 in one direction and 1.618 in the other. And then we're going to divide this by the golden ratio. And we're going to divide the long line by the golden ratio each time. And this is what I get. So I divide that by, I divide that by, I divide that. So, see, it's getting smaller and smaller. Now, the area of each one of those are linked in this proportion. So there'll be a 1 in here somewhere, but 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 34, and 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34. Yeah?
Yep.
Now, if I take the midpoint of each one of these and I draw a line to the midpoint of the next one, I'm going to get something that looks like this. Yeah?
Yep.
Where have I seen that before?
Beaches, flowers, hurricanes.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Galaxies. Mona Lisa is claimed to have it, but I can't see it somewhere. And the Parthian is claimed to have it. I can't see that one.
Yeah. You can put it on top of anything.
Right. What's all this got to do with the henges? So Nunwick henge is a marker of the alignment from the Devil's Arrows to Thornborough. It's there, look. And that line actually passes within the boundary of the henge, within the embankment. I mean, it's just it's all gone effectively. It's all been ploughed out. So, but you can still see it on aerial photographs. But if I was going to put a marker, I'd put it at the midpoint. Why isn't it in the centre of that line? Well, I've known for a long time that it was somewhere near the golden ratio point. So if I take the central arrow to the central henge, I get 54,816 feet. And if I take the central arrow to Nunwick, I get 35,219. That gives me 1.556, 1.618. It's not bad, but it's not that accurate. The error is 1,300 feet. Now, I had a little bit of enlightenment earlier in the year when I thought, well, each one of these is stars. Why would they do it from the middle one to the middle one? Maybe they'd do it from the inside one to the inside one, and the outside one to the outside one. So we're talking about doing it, say, from the southern stone to the northern henge. And what happens if I do that? So the distance from the southern arrow to Nunwick henge is 35,634 feet. Distance from the southern arrow to the northern henge is 57,671 feet. Divide one by the other.
Wow.
That's what I
Whoa.
get.
Whoa.
Well, it's hard to say that's by chance. I would say.
And that works in any unit, by the way. You don't have to do it in feet. You can do it in meters. You can do it in whatever you want. So we can be pretty sure that the Greeks were the first people to know about the golden ratio. Not only that, but the ratio of the diameter of Nunwick henge to Thornborough Central works out to be, if I multiply 380 by 1.618, I get 615 feet, and Thornborough Central is actually 613 feet, as you can see there. So the error is insignificant. I mean, it's difficult to measure these things because they're so eroded, but it's pretty near. So the external diameter of the two southern henges is 8,860 feet, sorry. The internal diameter, which I measure here, is 532 feet, 1.618. So do you know about Euler's number, or E?
No.
So it appears in lots of things. Many things decay or increase over time, depending on the amount of what's in there. So, for instance, if you got a big bucket full of water with a hole in the bottom, you know fine well that when it's full, the water will rush out at the bottom, and as it goes down, it'll slow down and slow down and slow down until it stops. And you get this sort of generalized curve.
Yeah, we get this all the time in moving wine around. You got a big tank full of stuff, and it moves fast at first, it slows down.
Yeah. So I don't want to bore you with the math, but it's got a general equation as this. and the equation centres around this E. And E is a constant, which is 2.718. It's an irrational number, so it goes on forever. But 2.718 is quite significant, and it applies to all sorts of things: radioactive decay, growth of plants, compound interest, ablation of the shuttle heat shield.
Yeah,
I
this is
suspect
cool.
I suspect they didn't have heat shields back in this time.
That's probably how they tested it. Yeah.
They had fire shields and magic.
Bring the space station down and let's check.
So do you remember Claro Hill? We mentioned this in episode 1. It's an earth mound south of the Devil's Arrows. And I located it from old maps. So it's marked on this map here. And using field boundaries, that's the best I could get to it. So if I measure the distance from the, tell you what I've done here, from the Southern Arrow to Claro Hill, it's 21,293 feet. And if we go back to our original baseline, which was from the Southern Arrow to the Northern Henge, that's 57,671. I get 2.708 instead of 18. So the error is 75 feet. Now it's be quite easy for me to have made that error when I plonk this down here. But could be coincidence. I mean, I don't think the golden ratio is coincidence, but that could be. I'll show you how it can be coincidence. So, if I measure from the central arrow to Canabarn, which is Aldebaran, if you remember, not that it matters for this side. No, it does matter for this side, sorry. It's that distance. And our baseline, again, is slightly different because I've taken it from the central stone to the central henge. I get a figure that looks like that, which is pretty close to that. Now, interestingly, these things are all stars. So, central arrow is Alcyon, Canabarn is Aldebaran, the central henge is, can't pronounce it, but
Alnilam.
it's getting too late. So, E is in the stars. So, that must be pure coincidence because no one's put the stars in the right place for that.
Well, hold on now. How do you know that?
Well, you never know. Maybe God's waiting for us to find out. A quick one on pi. So there's a henge, or the remains of a henge. I think it's a henge, Tenlands henge. Once again, we don't have the exact location, but we're pretty close to within 100 feet. So if I go back to my original measurements, which were the Southern Arrow to Tenlands henge is 18,000, so I'll measure everything from the Southern Arrow. And the original baseline, so the Southern Arrow to the Northern henge. And I divide them, I get 3.122. Pi is 3.142, so the error is actually more significant. Now it's 374 feet. So,
yeah,
there's your money, takes your choice on that one. How about the Great Year? So, an age in the Great Year is 2,160 years. The distance from Hutton Moor Henge is 26,618. I've got the same baseline. I divide the two, I get 2166.
Yeah, that's close.
And it could also be the lunar diameter, but that only works if it's miles.
It's in miles, yeah.
But I thought that the golden ratio was pretty spot on, and the others.
Yeah, I agree that the golden ratio seems solid.
I'm really curious now to see about those triangles. Because when you were going through the math, I remembered it's so you have a 1, 2, and so it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it would be the square root of 5 is the hypotenuse.
Yeah.
And then with the compass, you take, because it's a 1, 2 triangle, you take the 1, you set the compass to the 1, and you spin it around and divide the hypotenuse so that it's the square root of 5 minus 1. And it's that, then you set the compass at the other end and set it to the square root of 5 minus 1 and divide the 2 line. And that is that makes the golden ratio between the 2 line.
Yeah.
And it's a really simple way of getting the golden ratio on a design. Just using the compass and a square, or a compass and a straight edge. Square root of 5 minus 1. Because you had that in your when you were showing the math earlier. Pretty cool.
Just making a note of that because I want to look at that tomorrow. Right, so this might be woo-woo, but I'll go through it anyway. So I've already mentioned that the map has been scaled down from it should be 2,500 miles, and it's 10.9. So, but why to the scale that it is? So, if I look at it this way, so the southern stone to the southern henge is 10 miles exactly. The Earth's circumference is 24,900 miles. 10 miles is 1 over 2,490. So you see those numbers recurring. Now that might be pure coincidence, but what about this? So the North Stone to the North Henge is 10.8 miles. That's that number 108.
Yeah.
So I think it's woo-woo, but it's interesting. I mean, if they really meant it, the 108 is pointing to this and pointing to this.
That's cool.
Some of this stuff, makes me again think of resonance, like very large patterns. And we were just discussing like, well, the stars can't be said to have this number in them, but dude, we found the number because of something that happens in nature.
That's right, yeah.
So it's hard to argue that you shouldn't find it in something else in nature, just because I mean, I know that the placement of the stars is relative to where we are and all this kind of stuff, but still, we only know about this number because people are checking how long things take to drain out of the bottom of a bucket or whatever, or how long populations grow or shrink or anything like, or plants' growth. So it's, I don't know.
The other thing I would point out is on the margin of error, all those things you listed that exhibit, the phi ratio. If you were to take any specific shell and measure it, it's going to have error.
It has error, yeah.
Yes.
They perfectly represent.
They're never perfect. But on average, if you were to measure the entire spiral of a shell, you would keep getting close and close to that number. Same thing with a circle. There's no perfect circles. These are all irrational numbers. They don't appear in nature exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
It's just on average, everything sort of conforms to that idea.
So, build date of the complex. So, mentioned before that the standard model date is from 3,500 to 1,800. Anyone that thinks it's 1,800 knows nothing about the subject at all. The preferred date is 2,800, which isn't a bad guess, actually. So, the real builder date of the complex then. So the stars have two apparent movements across the sky. So daily, it's caused by the Earth's rotation. And a full rotation against the stars takes 23 hours, 56 minutes. So it's an anti-clockwise movement. The great year is caused by precession, and we think it's 25,920 years, but there are some people who think that that changes over time in some sort of cyclic thing. So I just want to show you this. This is how precession works. So what I'm looking at, so this is the precession cycle. This is the North Pole as we have it now, so the North Axial Pole. And you can see that it's set to the year 2000 there, and there's years all around here. And we've got the constellations around here. So I'm going to run this, and it's going to go back 1,000 years at a time. Just set your eyes on one of the constellations and you'll see what happens to the sky. So you can see that the whole sky is moving. It's not just things around this this center point that moves. It's the whole sky. And you can imagine that this might be the horizon, and stars are moving up through the horizon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Now, so we've mentioned this before, because the stars travel across the sky, it's possible to use them to date monuments if you know that the monument's aligned to the stars, and if you can find out which star it was aligned to. So we know the Devil's Arrows are the Pleiades. The rising point of the Pleiades tracks along the horizon from about 29 degrees to about 129 degrees over half a great year. And I've shown you this graph before, and I'm sure that some people understand it, and to a lot of people it's meaningless, but you've got dates along the bottom, and you've got the angle here, so it comes right down here to 29 degrees, and then it tracks back along the horizon up to over 120 there.
Yeah.
And the next cycle is higher, and the next cycle is lower.
So I think, go back to the graph real quick. I think this is correct. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but for people that this maybe doesn't make sense to, imagine that up and down line as a spiral, so that if you were to look at it end on, it would look like a circle.
Yes.
So that is actually a circular motion stretched out on a
across.
two-dimensional graph
Yeah.
over time. So it turns into a sine wave.
Bit like a screw thread, really.
Yes, exactly. A screw thread. Thank you. So that is the
It's bent.
rotation of the pole
It's a bent screw.
in a circle over
Yeah.
time.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Now, this might make more sense to anyone, though. You're looking here at the eastern horizon. So there's due east, and we're looking at it from 30 degrees to about 130. Here you see the Pleiades is just rising, and this is the track it will take. This was in the year 2000.
That's the track it'll take throughout the night, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
As it rises, it'll follow that track. Now, if I run this, it's going to go back 1,000 years at a time, and you'll see what happens. So you can see that the rising point tracks along here, comes to a standstill here, and then accelerates back down here.
And it's getting faster as it's in the east. It's
yeah.
Yeah,
every
so at the
1,000 years it moves
midpoint-
further, and then it starts to move less
Yeah,
and less
that's
every
right.
1,000 years until it gets to
Yeah.
its
Again, it's
furthest.
describing we're looking
Yeah.
at a big circle edge on.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you're looking through that circle at that
Yeah.
point.
Very cool.
So now, from the Devil's Arrows, we know that the Rudstone Monument is directly east, so we're drawn to the easterly direction. So it's probably what you would call an equinoctial marker, despite the fact I said that there didn't appear to be any. And it's within a few feet of being, probably, I think it's from memory, it's 5 or 6 feet, of being directly east of the Northern Stone. Now, when we're looking at this, we need to bear in mind certain things that will have significance to the people in ancient times. So the vernal equinox was very significant. That's the spring equinox, 21st of March. And the helical rising of an object was always considered significant. Now, the helical rising is the star that, or when a star rises just before the sun rises. Now, it can be rising at any point along the horizon. So we've seen the Pleiades goes from roughly 30 degrees to roughly 130 degrees. It can be any point along that horizon that it rises. But if it's coming up just before the sun, that's the helical rising. Now, in 2870, and I just want to come back to this date, but let's state this first. The Pleiades helical rising is due east on the vernal equinox. Now, if that's not significant, I don't know what is. So I first discovered that the Pleiades were rising due east in that period quite a while back, and I was thinking, well, 2800 BC is probably right. And then my 3 o'clock voices said, no, you're wrong. And very definitely, no, you're wrong. I mean, it's the only time I've ever had an answer from them, because it came back with, look at 2870. Most of the time it just says, have a think about this. But this was definitely. So I've marked on here, due east. And this is on the equinox, so it's the 22nd of March, 2870 BC. And you can see that the sunrise starts there. That's when it first cuts the horizon and moves up there. Alcyon, which is the central star, is slightly above the sun, but you can see that the Pleiades are about 1 degree above the horizon, or the top of the mist, the middle of the mist, sorry, and they're absolutely bang on due east. Now, if they were rising on the line of the sun, the date there would be 2910. But by the time they were 1 degree above the horizon, they'd be about here, so nowhere near due east. And likewise, if you go a few years, 30, 40 years, this side, they'll be significantly out. But that line totally bestrides them. Now, there was one other thing I found which drew me to this date. And, oops, sorry. Just put that to one side. I also found that there's something called an anachronal rising, which is when the stars rise as the sun sets. And I never knew that existed, but I suppose it does if you think about it.
Yeah.
Right. So one other thing drew me to that particular area of time, and that's I found this conjunction. Now, these conjunctions are particularly special, and it's controlled by Jupiter, which is an 11-point-something year cycle. But this conjunction is on the summer solstice, and it has Mars, Venus, Mercury, Regulus, Jupiter, Castor, and Pollux.
Wow.
So let's just have a look at that. So you can see that there's Pollux there. Jupiter's just rising. Up comes Mercury. The sun is beginning to rise now, so it'll begin to drown out all the rest of them. So we've got Regulus, Venus, Mars, and the moon there as well, which I was moving off the list. Now, the sun is definitely going to drown out some of these, but if their astronomy is as good as I think it was, they would have known about this. So
That's cool. I'd like
I
to see
believe
something
that-
like that.
quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you stood there watching it.
Yes.
So I believe that the complex was designed before it was built, and the design date is either 2873, which aligns with this, or the year after, because they knew that they had the 2870 days, and they built the stones on that date, or not on that date, but in that year, and they began building the stones and the henges. So I think that is the date.
All right.
Yeah,
Convinced?
I'll buy it.
So, quick summary. There is a sky map in Yorkshire. Hope I've convinced everyone of that.
Yeah.
So the things I think are really significant, I put in red. So the Ripon Cathedral site could be one of the oldest sites in England. Location of the Yorkshire complex is special, so it's this 10% of the circumference of the Earth from the North Pole. 4 or 5 things, I can't remember them all now. It's getting late. But it's a special location, I think, and it was selected for it being a special location. I'm lost. What have I done?
Oh no. I'll get
Bear
back to
with
it.
me.
Yeah, so this is the only downside of having links. Sometimes you forget how many links deep you are. and you
Where's the
get-
conclusion? Summary, number 17.
Summary.
No, it's
It's
not,
not
a
a
link.
link.
Dang it, Martin. That's the one you needed.
Yeah, you can get to it the long way.
The hard way. There we go.
Yeah, all right.
All right. Summary.
So, all right. So it's a special location, I think, and it was chosen for that reason. I think the monuments were part of a wider grand design. So we've seen the Network Britain or the Mapped Europe. I don't believe that nothing is there. I think something was there, and it was part of a wider design. So the devil link seems to have represented something. So quite what, I don't know.
Impact, I think, is most
yeah.
likely.
Most likely, I think.
Yeah, lots of stone
Throwing stones, yeah.
Yeah, throwing stones.
I guess
Dragons and
fire
that
and all that stuff.
yeah,
Melting stones.
yeah. So the design date was 2873. The build date was 2870. And the people who built it must have had these sort of skills. Astronomy, math, and the golden ratio clearly points us to that. Surveying, logistics, understanding the size and the shape of the Earth. And they may have understood precession.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And they might have gone to the Americas. This is another great
And
point
they
that you
might have
made.
gone to the Americas.
Because like you were saying that these, they were building it at this period, and then the building for the Americas hinges starts a couple of 100 years later.
Yeah.
Right after they disappear from the DNA evidence in Britain. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could imagine something awful happening in Britain and the survivors going elsewhere.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Well, thanks, Martin. That was excellent.
Yeah, great stuff.
The stellarium stuff at the end was great. We need to do a whole episode on stellarium,
yeah.
looking at alignments, how to use it.
Yep.
That was all great.
Right.
And we should do it at 3 a.m. for you, so we can talk to your 3 a.m. voices,
dude.
And that'll also be exactly at our podcast time. Just like right around 8 o'clock at night. It'll be 3 a.m. for you.
Yeah. I don't think you'll manage that. Remember when I first discovered this? It was 3 a.m. and I didn't get out of bed.
That's right.
That's true.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad we got to it. We tried, like I said, we tried to record this a couple of months ago and it didn't work out. So
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Total disaster.
Zero mistakes though. What are you talking about? What technical
I
problems?
didn't say it was a mistake. It was a disaster, though.
It was a disaster, but not a mistake. Okay.
So I did try and contact Randall about possible links between America and the UK. You remember I think it was 108 that he was talking about.
Yeah.
And you mentioned to him about that, but I've not heard anything back. So.
Yeah, that happens to us too. We try to contact him about things, and you don't often hear back from him. It's just how it is.
Probably a busy man.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
And
hope it goes well.
Yeah. Oh, it went well. I'll publish it later this week. So yeah, thank you guys, everyone listening. The harvest break is over.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoyed this episode with Martin. It was awesome for us, and look forward to more. I need to put his stuff into a playlist. Marty has his own playlist.
Yeah.
We got another Martin needs his own playlist. So
True.
yeah. So yeah, thank you guys. We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work. Good night, Martin. And thanks,
Good night.
watcher.
All right, good night.
Thank you, watcher.